All right. So we are live. I would like to thank everybody who's watching and in attendance. It's great to be here. So Esports Trade Association Education Committee is doing a panel, and today's topic is esports youth leaders leading the way. And with that, I would like to say hello to everyone, uh, every one of our panelists. My name is Coach Dwayne Pierre. I run a nonprofit that focuses on youth development and workforce development. We are esports teams, worldwide youth networks. We're also uh, kicking off, we're a NASEF affiliate, so we're kicking off our uh, Connecticut Consolidated Esports League in April. And I am joined by some very, very esteemed and fine gentlemen. We've got Anthony, we've got Sebastian, we've got Cheryl, and we've got Mark. Gentlemen, why don't you introduce yourselves? Why don't we start with you, Anthony?
I'm Anthony. I'm the Valorant captain at CCSU. Um, yeah.
Sebastian?
Hi, Sebastian Vertuna, head coach at Hall High School in West Hartford, Connecticut.
Ash, why don't we start with you? Well,
Hi,
continue with you.
I'm Ashario, or you may call me Ash for short. I help manage Varsity Esports, and I'm the former captain of Overwatch Varsity.
All right. And last but not least, Mark, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Kilpatrick. I'm one of the co-founders of Affinity Esports, as well as a new initiative we've launched here called Connecticut Esports. So I'm sure we'll get to dive into a lot of that.
All right. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. We're all uh, located and based in Connecticut, different parts of Connecticut. We work collaboratively across the state, and um, Connecticut has a very interesting history with Scholastic Esports. Uh, I think, if I remember correctly, the first Play Versus championship was played in Meriden, Connecticut. CCSU actually hosted uh, the first Play versus League of Legends championship as well. So Connecticut in general and New Britain have a rich history with Scholastic Esports. Um, fellas, before we get, we do a deep dive. Anybody want to share what their favorite game or genre is? Because we have to get that out of the way.
Ooh, that's a tough one for me. I would have to say one of my favorite games is Halo, the series Halo. But I do love the 2D side scroller genre, though. It's one of my favorites.
That's interesting. Anybody else want to jump in real quick?
Yeah. Mine is definitely, I grew up playing Counter-Strike, so FPSs, but Counter-Strike like 1.0 through 1.6. So maybe I'm dating myself a little bit. Now I'm a lot of Valorant and spend a lot of time watching Valorant and CS2.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I'm also on the FPS train here. So absolutely. Right now, I have a love-hate relationship with Overwatch, and it'll continue being that way. But yeah, FPS, and then I can't not mention my RPG days of playing World of Warcraft for hours on end, high school
Nice.
into college. So got to mention that.
Nice, nice, nice.
My favorite game is Ark Survival Evolved. I love survival games, really.
Wow. Okay.
That's
Okay.
my
So,
favorite genre, to be
wow,
honest. I love
nice.
Valorant too. It's one of my favorite games as well. But
Oh, I'm
I love
learning
survival games.
learning a lot today. So I have been playing Mortal Kombat. I bought Mortal Kombat. That was the first game that I ever purchased on Sega Genesis. Um, that was like 31 years ago, and I've been playing Mortal Kombat ever since. But I was doing the math, and I think I've spent more time playing Civilization and Skyrim than any other games that I've ever owned. I think Skyrim I've played more than my 31 years of Mortal Kombat. If we were talking about hours, I haven't even finished the main campaign. I just do side quests, and I just run around in the world. And it wasn't anything that I thought I would even enjoy. I just picked it up because it was like dirt cheap at the time. I think it's a 13-year-old game now. I probably picked it up like 7 years ago, and I have it on every single console I've ever owned. And I always start from scratch, and I have way more time than I'd like to think about. But if we're talking about esports, I would say that my love of esports came about because I had students who wanted to get into esports and wanted us to add esports to our program. And the way they convinced me, when they first asked, the first thing I said was no. I said what every adult had said to me from no one's going to pay you to play video games, right? Um, but then I stopped and I challenged them. I said, come back with some more information. If you can come back with research, we'll add esports to our program. And 3 days later, they came back with a bunch of research. And one of my former staff, Mike Harrison, said to me, he was like, esports is huge. He's like, I'm ranked in Rocket League. And I was like, you're ranked in Rocket League? I was like, I used to play Rocket League, but when I was playing, like, it took me forever to find anybody in the lobby. So, I kind of stopped playing. He was like, no, like now it's huge. And he showed me content online, and and this was 2017, and we've been an esports themed program ever since. And it was really based on the students pushing and advocating for it. And since then, we've actually been able to quadruple the number of students who attend our programs because it's esports themed, but we're still working on esports development. I know all of you have different backgrounds. So why don't you tell me how you guys got involved in esports? Why don't we start with Ash?
Well, I first got involved in esports when I first came to CCSU. I believe I was talking to you actually. You mentioned that there's an esports program on campus, and I was really interested. I was like, oh, like what games are there? What are the options? And you mentioned Overwatch, and I was like, Overwatch. I used to love playing Overwatch, and then ever since then, I've just been part of it.
Nice. Mark, how about you?
It's a loaded question, Dwayne. So yeah, I competed at a reasonable level in the LAN scene in the Pacific Northwest back in the early 2000s, and that was really kind of my foundation was twofold growing up. And when I was younger, it was playing Counter-Strike at a decent level, competing in tournaments when things were really bootstrapped at kind of traditional LAN center scenes and environments. And then I also played soccer. So I had that fusion between kind of being a traditional athlete and then having this love for something that, quite frankly, wasn't understood. People rarely understood soccer back at that time. They're like, why aren't you playing football or basketball or one of the more accepted, American-driven sports? And then I also played Counter-Strike. So I found myself, in high school, very focused on trying to prove to people back in the early 2000s, 2000 through 2006, kind of why esports should be respected as a sport. And I, even in my junior honors English class, wrote a paper about why it should be respected as a sport. And I got a decent grade, but I don't think my English honors teacher was fully on board with it. But he appreciated the effort. And it wasn't until kind of post pandemic, I went to college, I played soccer. That it was during the pandemic that I really came back into it, and I saw what was happening on Twitch. I saw what was happening in collegiate. I got back into Counter-Strike, put a number of hours in, which I haven't calculated them, Dwayne, and I don't have it in front of me, so I won't put them out to everybody. But I actually started competing in ESEA, so I got back in through the pandemic and really built an online community, and then saw an opportunity to connect with people. And then we just focused in on Connecticut, and really initially our home community where my wife and girls live in Sandy Hook. So the focus has really been to leverage gaming and esports as an educational vehicle and a way to really connect with people, mentor people, and create safe spaces. So.
Oh, nice. Anthony, you want to?
Yeah. How I got into sports. I don't know. I've been playing video games my whole life. I remember in high school I played like probably 8 hours of arc a day. And that wasn't, a competitive esports scene at all. But I remember I used to play Rainbow, and I would watch like Bolo and a ton of like Rainbow players like in the pro scene and stuff. And that really like sparked my interest. And obviously they don't have Rainbow at the high school level. So I started learning how to play Rocket League a little bit. But I never really took off anywhere. I ran my whole life, and that kind of was the thing that was taking off. And I came into college running for my first year and a half. And then I found out there was an esports team here, and I was like, oh, that sounds cool. I'll join it. And ever since then, I mean, just all I do is Valorant. That's all I think about now. I mean, all I do is Valorant strats, everything Valorant. I mean, I watch VCT like every single time. I'm still in the middle of my journey in terms of, esports and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into it.
Awesome. Sebastian, my friend, how about you?
So I am a technology and engineering teacher here in West Hartford, Connecticut. So it all started when, I had a gaming club going when I started here because they were like, hey, we're looking for somebody who loves video games to run a gaming club. And it was just kids bringing in a Wii U. This was like right before the Switch got released. And they would just play. And I just let them play, and I just kind of babysat them, I guess you could say. Like, there wasn't really any interaction. It was just like me, jumping in a couple rounds, but like, it was just casual. And then when COVID hit, I really had this core group that was like, we love playing Smash so much. Like, we need to keep playing. Like, what can we do? And then ironically enough, I got like an email from Playverse that was like, do you want to compete in your state for esports and for like games like Rocket League and Super Smash Brothers? And I was like, and I pitched it to the kids, and I said, hey, we're all distant right now, and you all have internet connections. Why don't we give this a shot? And we did the whole remote thing, and it was a little messy. It was definitely a lot of trial and error, and just like anything, you kind of learn from those bumps and bruises. But now we have our own lab, so I'm in my lab right now, and we're going on about 4 years strong. So
nice. And strong is the word there, Sebastian. I want to touch base on something you said, but before we do that, I want to just say for everyone who's watching so far, we've got Megan, we've got Edward, Matthew, Kevin, Maurice, and Ben. Thank you for checking in. Please leave any comments or questions in the chat, and this way we can we can respond to anything that you have, questions or concerns or considerations that you want to share with the world at large. But you said when you were running your club, it was just babysitting. And, here's the thing that I have to explain: the difference between playing video games and esports, and that there is a difference between having a video gaming club and an esports club. So Sebastian, I'm gonna jump in with you real quick. How do you make that distinction? And how, what do you think the distinction is between playing video games and esports?
Yeah, so I always liken it to basketball. You can put a hoop up in your driveway, and you can dribble a ball, and you can shoot the ball with your friends. Hey, maybe you go a little one-on-one, or you play some horse. You do something like that in your driveway with like your neighbors. But there's a difference between playing basketball there and then playing basketball for your high school team. And it's more structured. There's more plays going on. There's more how do you respond to adversity? So it's that whole idea of adding that competitive nature to it. And when I first ran the club, like I said, I mean, it kind of just felt like, hey, one kid had a duffel bag with a Wii U in it, and then a couple kids brought their DSs in. One kid brought in an Xbox, and I found out he was playing Mortal Kombat, and I was like, I probably shouldn't play that in high school. But I was like, let's try to do like Street Fighter, and like they would play Street Fighter or something like that. So, like, and again, it was just like, okay, whoever wants to plug it into the monitor, and I have a projector here, whatever we can do is whatever we do, right? So it wasn't really a structured regimen versus like esports, how I run it now. It's, Mondays are practices, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday are your games, and you would invest your time into it, and the kids like really they put their heart into it. Like I've seen kids like at their highest where they're like, this is amazing to win, and I've seen kids lose a big game. And how do you respond to that? And I'm so fortunate that I have a team who is like incredible. Like they're never sore losers. They're awesome. They know to shake the other kids' hands and to be like, hey, good game, that was awesome.
That's
Like
awesome.
they're always positive, and it's exactly what we're in it for.
That's fantastic. So I'm noticing in the comments, Ben runs an after-school esports program, and they just took states in Smash Bros. That's what's up. You know what that feels like, don't you, Sebastian?
Yeah, we got state champs before, so I know
Nice.
that feeling. It's awesome. It's
That's
awesome when
awesome,
you get
right?
to when the kids are holding the trophy. That's like the best feeling. You're like, yeah, that's why I do it. Like this is what it is.
Yeah, interestingly enough, Sebastian and I have a friendly rivalry between our high school teams, um, and they have the winning record by far. I'm not even gonna try to say anything. When we do win, I do make anytime we win against him, my kids get a pizza party because I like to celebrate and I like to gloat. But the thing for me is that even in loss, our kids are learning things, right? So they're learning resilience. Like I have students who, when they lose, they take it really hard, but the conversations afterwards are where we're teaching them. I when I make my comparison to esports, I always go to NASCAR. I would say everything, like even the chairs are racing chairs, right? So but one of my brothers is a basketball coach here in Connecticut. He runs the Capital Prep program, and he's very successful. They actually just named the gym after him um, about 2 weeks ago. And when I was explaining to him about esports, he was like, "So you guys play video games?" And I said, saying we play video games is the same way if I said to you, "Did you drive to work today?" And he was like, "Yeah." Because like, "Did you drive to work yesterday?" "Yeah." I was like, "How long have you been driving?" He was like, "I've been driving over 20 years." I said, "So with that 20 years of experience, do you think you'd be able to win the Indy 500?" And he was like, "Well, no." I said, "That's the difference between playing video games and esports." I was like, esports involves training. Our programs focus, like I said, we focus a lot on the workforce development side of things. So even students who are in our program who aren't um, doing the actual competitive play, they're competing um, in other competitions. They're doing marketing competitions. They're designing our uniforms. They're doing all of these other workforce development and social emotionally driven things that we connect to the competition. So we really try to run it as if we're an esports organization and there are different jobs, right? Our students work on their resumes, they do all these other things. Um, Having run your own company and now starting Affinity, um, how do you see this uh, correlation between workforce development and esports with the young people that you work with, Mark?
Yeah, that's a good question, Dwayne. So it's very similar here, right? We're obviously a private, community-driven organization and really focused on. I kind of liken it to like the Babe Ruth baseball or, like a premier travel soccer type structure is more where we sit within the ecosystem. And so we complement what's happening with Scholastic, but when our kids come in as well, like I'm sitting right now in our streaming room, and our studio here in Newtown is 1,200 square feet. But when we look at the way in which we've structured our programming, we do after school programming that addresses game creation. So they're actually seeing, and the kids that come into those classes are understanding what goes into game design, from coding to thinking about the storyline to the artwork. We're then doing content creation and branding. So the kids are actually getting an early look at how would we set up our stream? How does lighting work? How does shoutcasting look? What does it mean to create engaging content? And then the last piece is game based, right? So the actual, like, what are the real world skills that we're actually teaching through games, right? Teamwork, problem solving, etc. All the stuff we always talk about. And so those are kind of our 3 tracks. But when we jump into competitive play, we compete in a league just like a travel soccer team would. And we're competing, it might be virtually, but we expect our kids to show up. We need them to be practicing each week. And then we need them actually supporting the various aspects. As a startup, we have kids that are supporting the stream. We run a media day for our kids. So some people might have seen some of the content we put out where our kids actually get to be involved in a full production with their jerseys, and they get to actually interface and engage with our video production team. And then beyond that, a lot of times we're looking at captains, team managers. And so we do our best to try and find a fusion between how do we get kids engaged in as many aspects of what we're doing, similar to how you would in the K through 12, the scholastic ecosystem. And then we also look at how our pathways are built. So we partner with local colleges so that not only are we getting them experience when they're here and they're involved in a team, but how can we get them into internships when they're still in high school, when they're in college? And then we've had quite a bit of success with Post. Dwayne, we've worked on a number of things, actually bringing people in for full-time, part-time, and contract-related work with the business that's directly relevant to esports.
That's fantastic. Anthony, Shario, you guys not only play the games, you are captains, you are managers, you are helping out with content development. How do you, well, first of all, that's amazing. I don't know if I was in college, I'd be able to juggle as many things as you guys juggle and be so successful at it. But what I would like to say is that, well, actually, what I would like you to explain to us, what is your experience with bringing your love for the game and connecting it to other aspects of esports, just not gameplay? How do you feel about managing those things? How do, like what are your passions surrounding those things?
Oh, when it comes to passions around esports and the games that I play, it's very big. I've always enjoyed the art that's within video games, like how they're designed, how they're made. And it's gotten to the point where not only do I play the games, but I study how they're made and how different games, how different models, and what it takes to texture them, to render them. I'm actually at the moment learning Blender because I was curious on how you make 3D models. How does someone make an entire scene in a video game? What does it take to build maps? The process has been fun and a bit confusing, but mainly fun. Because there's moments where I'm just like, wait a minute, how did this guy do this? That doesn't make any sense. And then when I do a bit more research, I'm like, oh, that's how he rendered it. That's why it looks so cool this way. And whenever I play a game, I notice little details within character designs or map designs, and I'm just like, hey, I see this. I noticed this little neat bit right here. I enjoy learning how to make it, and not only playing and not only learning how to make it, but sort of getting a better understanding on what it takes to really make these games. It is something I want to do one day, is make my own.
Anthony, how about you?
I love the glory. I just love competing. I've been competing my whole life. I played soccer, baseball. I ran until I got into college. I ran in college. I love the glory. I love learning strats. I love implementing them. I love playing. And I look at like VCT and I see, like the champions winners and the winners and how happy they are and all the glory that they get. I just love that. That's what I want. I love playing. I love competing. That's my passion for the game.
Nice, that's awesome. We have David from Philly has joined us. We have Peyton and we have Travis. Hello, everybody. Peyton wants to know where Affinity Esports is located.
Yeah, Peyton, we're so solely Connecticut based, and we are growing rapidly across Connecticut. So our current studio is in Newtown, Connecticut. We're looking at launching studios now in Milford this year, Connecticut, Trumbull, Connecticut, and then we have mobile capacity in terms of gaming laptops, consoles, and other equipment that takes us across the state and keeps us pretty fluid.
That's awesome. Let's see. So we're here to talk about esports and education. And this is an open-ended question for everybody. If you want to chime in the comments, everybody, feel free. How do you envision this partnership between esports and education, and how do we where are we now, and how do we grow it?
Yeah, I think I can speak on that from a high school level. So, I guess the consensus right now in a lot of Connecticut high schools is that we kind of have esports as that after school activity in some places. We're fortunate enough to be considered a part of athletics. I see the growth heading towards starting to impact the classroom more. I teach digital media and video production. I teach graphic design. I've taught game and web design in the past. It's almost a no-brainer to start to implement some of that into the classroom. And it's kind of that marriage of now we start to get that CTE connection, which is going to be your careers in technical education. We start to marry it with that after-school program. And not even just the technical side. So, like, I teach the technology side. I would love to get the business involved. We have a sports and entertainment marketing class. I would love to start to talk to them about, like, hey, this is how we can incorporate esports. So I think, again, it's that growth of starting to bring it during school hours and not just after school hours.
Awesome. Anthony, you have any insight in how we can better grow education in esports?
Um, I think game design. I feel like that's a really big industry that just keeps growing, and I think that that's like one of the main things. But not even just game design, but also like coding, stuff like that. Because I'm a computer science major, so I do a ton of coding and whatnot. And obviously, coding is a big part of games, but you can learn a ton just from the coding of certain games. Not even just what games, but like outside world like stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I think there's a lot that you can learn from video games and stuff like that, just in general. I think it's just going to keep growing.
Mark, I know you actually work with younger students. Like we're talking high school, college. You have a younger user base as well. You mind chiming in on that?
Yeah, so just for context, we basically start 6 or 7 is what we've sort of pinned as the appropriate age for kids to be ready to come in, be on equipment. And our big thing is we've always said access, awareness, and acceptance. Like those are the 3 things we're really trying to drive. And so in the early stages, and I'm sure everybody that's on this call that's listening in the various ways you've engaged with esports and gaming, one of the biggest things and humps we have to get over is that community level kind of awareness, but that really drives the acceptance piece too. And so it comes down to how we're educating parents. So every program that we run, especially with younger kids, Dwayne, we really look at how are we marrying the programs that were the educational or the competitive teams with the younger kids and programs. And then we're also working with the parents. So it's really, really twofold. And then we also are syncing in with various state level organizations, and we're also looking at partnerships locally in each of the towns that we're in, so that you get kind of this aura effect as people start to be more aware of what the benefits are. And then we reinforce that by creating clear pathways so the parents understand there's benefit. They can now, if their kids are starting with us, guess what? They're going to have an opportunity when they go to Newtown High to compete, or when they go play for Sebastian's program, if somebody's in another part of the state, right? And then if they're a part of those programs, then guess what? You can go over to Post or CCSU where you can compete. You can be a part of an educational program. At Post, they have a minor's, bachelor's, and master's degree program. So you can actually get a degree. And we have our first student who's come through. He works with Affinity, he's competed with Affinity, and he is now declared to go to Post University and be a part of their esports program and study gaming and esports management. And so that's where we start to see the value, because parents and community leaders are coming along for the ride, and they're starting to believe.
That's amazing. Ash, you have well, I've known you, I think, like since the 5th grade. And I know I've had conversations with your mother about the benefits of esports, and even she said, she thought you were wasting your time, but it's sort of come around to it. I think that's amazing. Could you talk about how esports has helped you from an educational standpoint?
Oh well, there's a little bit of aspect for that. Oh, when it comes to an educational standpoint, esports has helped me sort of figure out how to a better way to not only manage time, but how to prioritize everything I need to do, so I can do what I want to do. One thing I used to struggle with is that I used to be like, "Oh, I have an essay due, but I want to play games." And then after entering esports, I sort of realized, okay, I need to better balance my schoolwork so I can then better do what I want to do or learn what I want to learn. Uh, I've become a lot more focused on making sure I have good grades and a good work ethic so I can properly lay back and be like, okay, now I can play games. Now I can do esports. Now I can learn some modeling.
Absolutely. And as a coach, one of the things, actually, not only at the high school but even at the collegiate level, one of the things that I prioritize is grades. And I know that every esports coach that I know, who and have ever come across, who takes their job seriously. Some people say they're esports coaches, but what they're actually running is a babysitting, video gaming club, where it's like they show up and the kids just play, and they couldn't even tell you what the kids are playing. It's not structured in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Those aren't the programs I'm talking about, but a true scholastic program. Every scholastic esports coach that I know has worked diligently to make sure that grades are important. They stay on top of it. At Central, we actually have an academic advisor specifically for the esports team. So if you're on the team, it's mandatory that you see the academic advisor, because I say this in high school and I say this to my college athletes. Nobody cares how many championships you won if you don't graduate. So the priority, we're talking about scholastic esports, not just esports, but scholastic esports, and the scholastic part of it comes first for a reason. Esports is important. We all know it's important. As from an industry standpoint, it's I think it's the largest segment of the attention economy revolves around esports and gaming. Um, but you also have to treat it like education, industry, and entertainment go hand in hand. So I think that's fantastic. Uh, we have, let's see, we have any more questions. Okay, no, that was actually posted. So let's get into a topic that I think we've touched on, but I really want to do a deep dive. How young should students be involved in esports, and what's the role of youth and young adults? And youth is being defined now like 26 and under. Like, what roles should they play in developing this scholastic esports ecosystem? How about we start with you, Sebastian?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to start it at the middle school level. I think that's kind of that. It's kind of where the kids start to figure out what their identity is in a way, right? That's where kids start to figure out, hey, I want a place where I have like-minded people, and they really want to start to kind of learn the teamwork aspect of it. That's why we hold sports in such high regard. And I played little league in middle school. I learned so much about what it was like that. Hey, when I was at bat, I'm helping somebody else out. I'm helping that runner on second try to round bases to third and home, right? I'm trying to do all that. So I think that if we could start it at the middle school level, that would be amazing. I actually just spoke to one of the middle school teachers at the middle school that feeds into our high school. and he was saying how he's like, this is amazing. How can I get started? And I'm trying to give him some resources and trying to get him started to just like run local tournaments. I'm like, hey, if you can get like 2 Nintendo Switches, like go run some Smash tournaments or something like that, and get the kids involved, get the kids wanting to play. And we're probably going to link up in April or May and trying to run a tournament because I got some of the equipment. I could just it's a 3 minute drive from here.
Nice.
So I don't mind doing that. But yeah, I think I guess to answer the question and to kind of bring it back, yeah, the how young we should start, definitely around in the middle school age, and it's good to have those advisors and not a babysitter, as Dwayne keeps harping on my one example from earlier.
I think it's a fantastic, fantastic example because it's the difference between I I work with a lot of programs that are trying to get into esports, and I sit down and we talk to them about what they want to build. And I find that they have no youth involvement in the decision making process, which is asinine because the people who are making the decisions, I don't know whether they've even played a video game in the last 20 years. So, I don't think that leaving them, to solely make the decisions makes sense. But a lot of people are looking to start what I call the Parks and Rec version of video games, right? It's like, okay, we just want as many kids as possible. We want to keep them occupied. They want to play, and that's great. You do homework help, you do this, you do that, but esports is a different animal. We've had conversations and we've been fighting uh, locally about what esports is, and people are like, oh yeah, like Minecraft competitions, and I'm like, those are competitions. I don't necessarily consider them esports. Um and I'm like, and I might be wrong. I don't necessarily stand like that's not a hill I'm willing to die on. It's just I draw the line. I think that at younger ages, I've used video games to teach literacy. So we've used Minecraft. We've used Minecraft competitions to get kids excited, and we've used it to so that kids can identify words. Um, we've used Scratch as a literacy building thing where we want students to understand coding language as early as possible. So we use Scratch. There's so many different ways we can do things, and we add a competitive nature to it, but it's not really esports until it crosses that threshold of organized competitive play. Where there's a winner and a loser. I'm not a fan of youth soccer where everybody gets a trophy. Esports should have a clear set of rules. They should adhere to different things, and you can't every competition is not a sporting event. If I go outside and I'm shooting hoops, it's not the same thing as going and watching a high school basketball championship. And too many people are trying to blur those lines, and I've been kind of drawing a line in the sand. But when I talk to students, even they make the distinction, and they're fine with that distinction. It's the adults who seem to get in the way. So and I want to circle back to where do young kids and young adults fit in that decision making process? And we have two people who are managers here, and we have Mark who integrates youth into his program. So I'd like to hear from everybody else.
I've definitely got some thoughts if I can jump in.
Mhm.
One of the things when we started Affinity Esports was this perspective that the esports industry was growing. There's a lot of organizations doing amazing things, but there was this general kind of stigma across many different areas, right? And negativity around it. And so our whole objective was we have to be better with everything that we do. We have to be better. We have to be more on point. And so everything from our branding to the media days we run with our kids, to the jerseys that go on our kids' backs, to the pride that they feel when they wear the logo. And that's all the way up to young adults. And one of the things we've struggled with a lot, And this is because youth, like, and all the, like, all the way down to like some of our youngest kids up to some of the 20-year-olds, and early 20-year-olds in that are involved with us have a huge role to play, is that we struggle with our teens. Like our teens, we have this kind of essence of, they don't have to abide by the same rules that maybe a sports team has to abide by, or they don't have the same expectations. And so we found, especially with gaming, that it's been harder for us to pull some of those young adults, kind of 16, 15, 16 and up, into a structured environment, because I think there's still this historical view that if they're at home or they're not being held accountable, they can kind of do and say what they want. And so we really press upon people that we have to be better. And so when people come into our programs, that's what the expectation is. And I think young adults and teens have a huge role to play in helping push the industry forward, both in the work that they do and how they legitimize it and the way they present themselves. But also when you're a part of a team, you got to show up for practice. You don't forfeit your games. You need to be on site. And these are things that I know we're all struggling with in our leagues. And so we've done our best to try and set a higher standard here to make sure people are on site. They have a code of conduct that they have to sign. We may be a private organization, but we interface in with grades. We interface in with parents. And if parents have an issue or the kids are not succeeding at school or with other obligations, they don't get to play, because we have to be driving that forward. So for me, it just comes down to the role they can play in legitimizing the space, and really holding themselves and each other to a higher standard.
Anthony, Ash, do you have anything that you'd love to add?
I think I agree with Sebastian in terms of middle school. I think that's a good starting point for like kids to kind of like start learning about, you know, what esports is and how to play on an organized team and stuff like that. And I think high school is where it should really like kind of take off into that more like organizational kind of like standpoint, I suppose. Because I don't know, when you're a kid and you're playing video games, you just kind of want to have fun. But for me, as I've gotten older, I kind of want to understand and learn the game more and understand how to effectively implement strats and play well and win and whatnot. But I think middle school is a good starting point for that. Yeah.
Ash, you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I want to add. I agree that high school is a good point to get them more into the game, and maybe if any of them show interest in wanting to create stuff for games, you could then start teaching them stuff like, oh, hey, here's Blender, here's Unreal Engine, here's Unity, here's stuff that you can learn. You can learn coding, you can learn modeling, you can learn art, and about a lot of very creative things, that stuff that I wish I was able to find clubs for when I was in high school.
Yeah, I think knowing, first of all, meeting students where they are and using that as a platform for empowerment, whether it's on education, social, emotional, or career exploration, really should be how things are shaped. We as the adults have to, take the reins on a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that we don't have the input and influence of the youth that we're serving involved. Speaking of which, Ben asks, how do we feel about shooters in middle school and high school? And this is something we were going to bring up anyway. I recently had, so I've been defending first person shooters in high school. I think once you reach the high school level, the games like Valorant and Overwatch in particular, I think that they have the advantage of having a huge collegiate footprint. So there are a lot of schools that are actually looking for Valorant and Overwatch players. And then I had a conversation with a clinician. It was recently. It was within the last 5 days. Who's basically saying that some of the reasons why these games have been banned is simply because they don't know who's going to be in the room and who's going to be triggered. And I have mixed feelings about that. Um, but I do understand when you're looking at it from a standpoint of, we don't know who's going to be adversely affected because they're triggered. That's a different conversation than saying first person shooters and third person shooters lead to actual real world violence. There's absolutely no data that supports that. As a matter of fact, Stanford University just released a study that compiled several other studies, and there's no data that even comes close to supporting that. Um, we everybody on this panel plays some sort of shooter, whether it's a looter shooter, war games, whether it's Overwatch or Valorant. How do you guys feel about that? And is there a difference between having it in middle school versus high school? So question number one, how do you feel about shooters in uh, middle school and high school? And is there a line between having it in middle school versus high school? Is the follow up to that question. What? Why don't Sebastian? I'm gonna finish off with you because I know that this is gonna be good. Why don't we start with Anthony, and then we'll do Ash, Mark, and then Sebastian.
Yeah. I could see the line between like middle school and high school. I can see that, but I can't see why it shouldn't be allowed in high school. Honestly, I mean, I've been playing first person shooter games since I was in middle school. Um, I think there's so much that they're missing out on with not having FPS games. And like you said, like we're looking for, Valorant players from high school to come to college. It's just another avenue for people to go to college and get a better education. If you think about it, that like there's so many people, if you look at like, high schoolers, there's so many high schoolers that play FPS games in general. And I'm sure if there was some kind of route for them to play in high school and then, go to college and play, they would love to do that. But it's just not an option right now. And I think that's honestly sad, but that's my view on it, I guess.
All right, Ash, what are your thoughts?
I feel like it's hard to balance which games are like which shooter games are fine for middle schoolers and also fine for high schoolers. Like there's some that are very comical and goofy that I feel like, oh, like a middle schooler could play this because it's not that bad. But then there's other ones like Call of Duty where it's like I don't think a middle schooler should play it, but a high schooler I think it's fine. I think there should be a good balance between like cartoonish violence with guns and then like realistic violence with guns. Like if you said, "Oh, middle schoolers can play Marvel versus Capcom," okay, it's superheroes, it's Marvel and Capcom characters, so it's all goofy fighting. They have guns in the game, but it's all goofy and cartoony. But then it's like, oh, it's like, hey, let's give a middle schooler Mortal Kombat 11. It's like, okay, well, let's not do like we shouldn't show them someone. You should show someone getting decapitated. But it's like if it's a high schooler, I'm like, okay, you can play Mortal Kombat. You can have fun there.
Stop picking on Mortal Kombat people.
Never.
Mark, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, I'm obviously in a little bit of a different position because we, we complement a lot of the scholastic programs that are around us that can't support these titles. Being independent for us, it's more of a discussion with parents, and we see a lot of kids that come into our programs, at any age, and every parent's, tolerance is different, but 9, 10 to 11 or 12, and a lot of parents come in and they're not ready for it, right? They're like, we just don't know, we're a little bit uneasy. But what's really interesting is a lot of times we see our parents actually make the conversion when they're with us. So you know what, we are going to waiver them, we are going to let them start playing these games, and we feel it's the right environment, and we see this kind of relaxation come in, this thing and this perception that FPS titles are bad, sort of just shaves off. And that's obviously not with every parent. Some people come in and they're just like, we know, like it's bad. And without looking at the research, right, or really understanding what the impact is. And I'll just second what you said, Dwayne. The research doesn't show. I mean, we've looked at that research study. It's absolutely amazing. But FPSs have been an integral part of my life since I was 10 years old. And my mom recently, when we were launching Affinity, she said, "Was I a bad parent?" I said, "Absolutely not. Like I fell in love with this thing. It's in my blood, and it's something you look at Anthony talking about competing and the glory, like there's nothing better than being on LAN and playing an FPS. If that's your title, whether it's League of Legends or a MOBA, or like I'm getting chills right now thinking about it. So that's an important thing that I think we have to focus on with our kids, whether they're middle school or high school. You can't tell somebody what is their thing. And when they want to be a part of something that's structured and positive, I'll just leave you with this. I think we're focusing on the wrong things. I try to transition it to say, let's focus on bringing people in instead of focusing on the content. And I agree, there's games where we probably have to have that discussion, but the top tier esports titles, most of them are at least worth having a discussion. Let's focus on bringing kids in at the middle school and high school level versus excluding them and sending the message that what they love is wrong because we're making a jump reaction to something that we don't fully understand. So my advice to people that are struggling with this, school districts, independent organizations with parents, is they need to sit down and just understand why it's important. They need to understand the research, because it's better that we bring people in than exclude them and send them the message that it's wrong.
Okay. And Sebastian, my friend, what are your thoughts? Because I know this is something that you are working very diligently on addressing in Connecticut.
Yeah, Dwayne, you definitely kind of teed me up for that one. First I want to answer Ben's question. Ben, so we offer Super Smash Brothers. That's our biggest one by far. Rocket League. And that's probably like second biggest, I would say. Mario Kart and Splatoon. We have the ability to offer Madden, 2K, and League of Legends. We just never had the interest. So we just go with like whatever the kids are interested in. If a kid walks in, they say they want to play 2K, I would love to offer 2K. So, but it's just kind of what we offer. And then kind of how do we feel about the first person shooters? So where to start? Without a doubt, I think that there's a line. So, for example, I don't think that kids should be playing Doom Eternal in schools. I want to make that very clear. I actually, and I think that line is the ESRB rating, right? Those teen shooter games where it's Overwatch, Valorant, games like that. I really like. There's such a disconnect of reality versus what's fantasy. I've been playing Overwatch for many years now, and never once have I took out a giant hammer and tried to swing or anything like that. So, all joking aside, though. Oh, go ahead, Dwayne.
You've never shot an arrow at a cybernetic gorilla before?
Nope. And no dragons came out either.
Man.
Never happened. I think I need to get the dragon tattoo first, but we'll see. But of course, all joking aside, I've defended this several times. I've wrote a petition to our local governing body for our athletic association that does sponsor us, and they are supportive, but they don't want to hear it at the end of the day. They don't want to support it, and they believe that the first person shooter is going to cause violence, and they always bring up the fact that, like, hey, Sandy Hook happened in our backyard in Connecticut, and well, it's appalling that gets thrown in our face because I'm the one in the classroom every single day. And when I met Mark, I even thought that was even more interesting because Mark is in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, and he's with that community. So to say that a first-person shooter video game causes that is astounding to me. I also picked up the book since our last conversation. I picked up the book Moral Combat.
Moral Combat.
Strongly recommend it. I'm like a quarter of the way through reading it. I strongly recommend it. It dismantles all those arguments. Esports Foundry also points out that if we want to provide our kids with collegiate experience, I mean, there's 4 pillars to esports. If anybody ever gets a chance, Esports Foundry came out with the trends in collegiate sports. They consider there to be 4 pillars of esports: League of Legends, Rocket League, Valorant, Overwatch. They consider those to be the pillars, and we're what are we if we don't have two of those pillars?
Absolutely.
So I strongly recommend it. And then again, I could keep going on and on about the research. Even there's commonsensemedia.org. They're an independent group that does research and reviews on games. And they go through and they say, like, hey, this is what age we think kids should be playing it. And if you look, Overwatch 2 is rated 13 and plus, but League of Legends is 14 plus. But it's all because of the perspective. And then again, I'd like to point out, well, if you're worried about perspective and the full first person thing is really choking you up, then by that logic alone, Grand Theft Auto should be allowed, which we all know should not be allowed in high school.
Yeah.
But again, it's that whole old logic, and I think and I don't want to get. I'm not picking any political sides here, but in reality, it's the politicians that have used first-person shooters as scapegoats, and it doesn't matter what party you're a part of. I've seen several past presidents, whether they be Democrat or Republican, they say, oh, we need to limit these kids playing these first-person shooters. It's like, well, no, you're using that as a scapegoat for your weak gun policy, but that's besides the point. Again, don't want to get into the politics of it, but it's being used as a scapegoat and everybody else is buying into it.
Yeah.
And kind of my last point here, well, if we're worried about protecting kids and we're worried about all of that, let's talk about brain trauma and CTE. Should we be allowing tackle football then? Should we be going into flag football? Because there is a safer alternative. You're telling us there's safer alternatives in different games. Well, there's a safer alternative to football.
Yeah.
So why don't we do that? And you can't say nobody's ever been, truly hurt by CTE, because that is false. And we're in a state that had Aaron Hernandez playing at a high school level. So there's plenty of logic there. Again, I can go on, and I think that would be a whole another hour live stream. But
yeah, so we may have to schedule another one just on this topic. I before we transition, we have a couple of minutes left. I do want to point out, Mark, had a very good point about two things. Things being in the right environment, and you brought up ratings. I don't think that students should be playing rated M games. So your CS:GOs and your Call of Duty. I love COD. Matter of fact, I'm going to Boston this weekend for the COD majors on Saturday. But I don't necessarily think that those should be in a school. But once again, we're not talking about kids playing in isolation. We're talking about playing with structured supervision, and I think there's a difference. So regardless of what they're being exposed to, if parents know what they're being exposed to, if they're being monitored by competent staff, I don't see the problem in having those things introduced to schools, because once again, we're not just saying, here, play by yourself and do whatever you want to do. It's structured, and there are all of these other benefits to it. Gina asked a question, and I want to make sure that we get to that before we wrap up. It's going to be real quick. Do you see more of your peers participating in esports or game design being female, LGBTA, or people with disabilities? If so, how are they being treated by fellow students, teachers, professors? Well, I got to tell you, I know that since we've switched to esports, we've actually increased our female participation. We've also increased the number of students who are non-binary and also transgender. And because we have an environment where we prioritize safety and engagement, we've never had an issue. And I got to tell you, if the day we have an issue, we are going to prioritize making sure that everyone feels safe versus educating the student. That student can be removed, and we can educate them separately and then try to reintegrate them. And that's the way we're set up, and that's the way we work with our school system. That's even how we've sort of set it up at the collegiate level. If someone is going to be toxic, we don't automatically, the step one is educating them and hopefully getting them to a better place where they understand what it is that they did. But this isn't baseball. You don't get three strikes. There's the intervention, and then after that, you just go right into dealing with the consequences. We do have, we're actually at 2 o'clock. If anybody wants to just jump in really quickly before we say our farewells. Does anybody want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I definitely will. We founded Affinity Esports on the basis of, again, fighting stigma. And one of the things that made me incredibly uncomfortable when I reintegrated into the gaming community was what was seemed to be just, flippant conversations online and comments when you were playing in competitive matches about race, gender, and everything else, right? It was really uncomfortable. And so we, from out of the gate, we created an environment that was focused on inclusivity and safety. And we've seen that that's paid off. I mean, we've got a very, very diverse group of young individuals and young adults that come into Affinity. And I can say, knock on wood, same with Dwayne, toxicity is absolutely unacceptable. We make sure that they're abiding by, language standards and other things like that. But we've had no major issues. And the feedback we've received from parents is that, and the kids, is that this is a place where they feel welcome and included. And I'll be the first one to say I'm a father of 2 baby girls. We're pushing on it. And Dwayne, we talk about this a lot.
Absolutely.
I want more girls coming in. And that's something we're still fighting. We're fighting that stigma, I think, with parents. I've watched high school girls, come down on their friends who love games. So I think we're trying to break through barriers in a couple of different areas. And we're working with industry leaders. We're partnering with people like the Girl Scouts of Connecticut to bring more in through the doors and to give more opportunities. So it's a constant work in progress, but it's been very positive so far.
All right, thank you, Mark. So that is our time, man. The time flew by. We're over 2 minutes. I appreciate everybody who commented in the chat or who's on this live stream. I'd also like to thank Anthony, Asherio, Sebastian, and Mark for gracing us with their time and their presence. I think it's been a wonderful conversation, and we definitely have to pick this up again. We do have, so if you want to learn more about joining the Esports Trade Association, you can visit the website at esports.sta.org. And the Esports Next registration for 2024 is now open July 7th through 9th. Discounts will be available for our members at esportsnext.gg. You can join us for another live event next week. The Legal and Regulatory Committee will present data protection on Tuesday, January 30th at 12 Central Standard Time. That's our time here. And join us for upcoming Coffee Connection event Wednesday, February 7th at 9 a.m. CST as well. Okay. So visit the calendar of events on the website and visit all the upcoming events. Once again, that's esportsta.org. And that will be it. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being on the panel. Greatly appreciate it. Everyone have a great day.